topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, the home of Googlization Nation, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about the crazy shift going on in the world of business, technology, and HR. Here's your host, Ira Wolf.
Hello there, Googlization Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. I've got my co-host, Jason Cochran, with me. How you doing?
Good to see you, partner. Doing great.
Our holiday cheermeister, right?
That's right. Still wearing the Christmas ornament lights. We'll do it for a couple more weeks to have fun. Can't believe that 2022 is almost here.
No, that's for sure. And for anyone who is listening on the podcast after the show, you got to take a look at the YouTube channel just for a minute and see Jason's dress. So wearing his necklace of lights. So appreciate the being in the spirit. And you're absolutely right. I don't know how we got here. December 4th, what is it? Whatever date it is, 15th, 2021. What year is it? It's Blur's Day. It's Blur's year. As we've been talking about, but yeah, incredible. I mean, it's hard to believe 12 months ago we were here talking about, couldn't wait to have that breakthrough. Vaccines were finally starting to come through. Places, states and businesses were starting to open up again. We were able to travel. Things seemed to be improving, and everybody couldn't wait to get to 2021 because we'd get back to normal. And here we are a year later. And as I like to say, we are living in the never normal. So there are some things that people went back to, but it's never the same. I had my last class last night for the master's class in organizational change. And we were supposed to have 3 in-persons, and we successfully had not one class that everybody was able to attend in person. Because
wow.
Either somebody was traveling, somebody was sick, somebody in their household had COVID, and managing that hybrid. We're supposed to be in person, and then somebody shows up on Zoom. Somebody wasn't able to show up because of some other incidences. That's the world we live in. But ultimately, everybody's wondering what 2022 is going to be like. And some people are just hoping this is all behind us. And then there's people like you and me and a lot of our colleagues recognize that this is only the first chapter in what we will be living in for as long as we can see. The never normal. But we're going to put what today is this episode, which in the past couple of years, by the way, has been the last episode of the year. We've had an economic forecast, and we reached out to an organization that I was familiar with when I was speaking, and also a member of Vistage or Tech Group, TEC, for years. And the ITR Economics used to come on every year. And sometimes several times a year, and give a forecast. And they have a really outstanding newsletter, and now they have some on-demand videos, which we'll hear about. But what's remarkable, and think about this, of predicting the economy, of what the forecast is going to be in many different aspects, which includes employment. Going back to 1985, they have a track record of 94.7% accuracy.
Whoa.
And then if you break it down and you look at employment, and I can't wait to talk to Jackie Greene in just a minute, somehow they screwed up last year because their unemployment forecast accuracy was 99% going back for years. And last year was only in the 90s somewhere. And think about all those things that go on. And
right.
How volatile, VOCA, how volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous the last year was. And yet they still managed to be in the 90% of accuracy. And similarly with the forecast, despite all those disruptions, they were still pretty strong.
So they're even better than the weatherman and weatherwoman at predicting the weather for the next day.
They're better than flipping a coin. Much better than flipping a coin, giving you some guidance. So everybody wants to pay attention. This is one of my favorite shows because we get all the data, the facts, and they have it. They do tremendous amount of research. So very excited. In the past, we've had Alan Ballou, was one of the founders and one of the partners with his brother. And this year he was unavailable. So we got promoted. We actually got promoted. Yeah, they pushed us up the ladder. And today's show, we're going to have Jackie Greene from ITR Economics. And rather than talking about the future, why don't we bring Jackie on and we can get started?
Let's do it.
And find out, what's going on. So welcome to Geeks Geezers and Googlization, Jackie. You're no longer a GGG virgin, right?
Well, thank you very much for having me.
So again, I know this is a crazy busy time of the year, for you, wrapping up what's going on. Not that any day or month or week, month or year isn't crazy anymore. But tell us just a little bit about ITR. I gave you a little bit of a build up there, but tell us a little bit that I might have missed, something that our listeners don't know about it. And then we can start talking about what can we expect in 2022.
Sure, happy to. I love what I do, so I could talk about it all day long. So ITR Economics, we've actually been around for over 70 years now. So we're the oldest privately held forecasting firm in the country, continuously operating forecasting firm in the country. Brian Bolio bought the company in 1987, but he's been with the company since 1982. His brother Alan, that you mentioned, joined, I believe it was 1989. So they've been at this for a very, very long time. I've been here for about 16 years now, and we love talking with the people who are living the lives where we love looking at the data and talking about that too, and how it actually impacts you. It's economic information, but with application. So it's very exciting for us.
Excellent. So let me just relay a little bit of a story that happened last night in class, and I think this is representative. And then again, trying to give employers a picture of what they can expect, because I think everybody's hoping this is going to be behind. Somebody's going to find the magic solution. We're going to have this infrastructure bill. If we ever get that, we're going to have to build back better, with whatever form or fashion that may or may not come in, and it's all going to be good. And yet we talk about this continued disruption and evolving. But last night in class, one of the students who was not able to make it, she was the one that was not able to make it in person. In the last week, she's a working mother. She's taking a master's level course. She's a working mother. She's a divorced mother. She's got a young child. She moved in the last week. She changed jobs in the last month. She's taking this class, and then her son, who was in daycare, is COVID positive, so has to stay home for 2 weeks. All this stuff happens. Now, we look at that and go, oh man, I mean, you can empathize with her, you can sympathize with her. The problem is this is happening all around. Everybody has something similar like this, different stories, and that sort of gets lost in the numbers. And I don't think employers recognize that. But before we dive into more stories like that and how this is relating it, let's go into what some of the trends you're seeing for 2022. Because most of the forecasts are, we're going to have continued growth, and there's always an asterisk after that, depending on a lot of decisions, the election, terrorism, disruptions, climate change, all that stuff. What do you see when you take a more macro look at it, not going down into the weeds? What's 2022, 2023 look like for us as employers, as everyday people?
Love to. First, though, I got to tell you, for a little while, though, I thought you were talking about me. I mean, so many of those things that last month, my kid had to be out of school for 2 weeks, my youngest. She wasn't COVID positive, so we set up one of the offices here at the office for her, and she was scooting around on her scooter. So we all find ways to make it work. So I relate. In terms of 22, 23, expect slowing growth. We've had this, for a very technical term here, gangbuster year of 2021 here. There's so much growth going on. Part of it was because we were coming off of weak periods in 2020 where the numbers look really good because of that reciprocal bounce of it, but a lot of it was real growth going on in the economy. But it's unsustainable at that sort of level. So we're going to see that level of growth tapering off in its rate of growth, but it will still be growth through 22 and 23, just a slowing rate of growth, which from some of the companies we've talked to, it's been kind of a sigh of relief when we tell them that, because they're tired. They're struggling to keep up with this high level of demand that there's this little bit of, phew, oh, thank goodness. Which sounds kind of crazy in some ways, because normally you're looking to just keep going and going, but it will be growth. That's the big thing. There will be some potential for a little mild pullback in a few select industries, but overall you're going to be expecting that growth throughout 23.
Are there some industries that you're expecting a bigger pullback, or or some are still going to go gangbusters? Are you seeing some different trends there?
The main one that comes to mind is one that's always in danger, is kind of the paper industry. That's one of those ones that we're going to see some of that pullback happen. But that's pretty typical. It's more just your normal sort of trends. We were already projecting a slower period of growth for this time in the business cycle. What's going to be normal is going to be normal. Economically, we're getting back to normal. Part of what caused some of that extreme growth in 21 was all the stimulus spending and all the checks that everyone was receiving. That caused a big part of our supply constraints as well, because we all had so much more money to spend, and we couldn't spend it at restaurants, we couldn't spend it traveling, we couldn't spend it going out to concerts and all sorts of things like that. So we were buying goods, and we had so much disposable income, we were buying lots of goods. Retail sales are at record high. GDP is back to a record high level. So it's really just coming back down to normal, because we couldn't continue at that level forever.
While the numbers at a high level don't mean anything to a lot of people, whether we're growing at 2% or 3% or 4%, can you just give some perspective? I mean, what rate of growth were we at? And when you say we're slower, how slow will it get?
Let me give you an actual number, just because I like to give real numbers. That's the economy.
That's why you're here. You got them.
We're expecting 21 to end around 5.3%. And that's industrial production in the US. It's more apples to apples for a lot of people in the industrial space than looking at the GDP numbers. That's what we talk to a lot. For 22, it's going to be about 2.8% growth. So it's a noticeable slower rate of growth, but still better than contraction. And then in 23, it's going to be about 1.6% growth.
But still growing. So.
Still growth. And that's pretty important piece to be paying attention to. And just for the record, all those numbers are coming straight from our ITR trends report. So that's nice and handy. And I access it on my phone wherever I am when someone else asks me that question. Because economists nerd to me, I somehow get asked that question all the time.
And the website's going across the bottom of the screen, and so people can go up there. And I know you have a number. We can talk about that at the end, but you have a number of different subscriptions that people can access this, and I can verify that they are well worth getting that information. It's amazing what you come up with and staying ahead of. So I think it's important, because as people are going back, and we work primarily, and we'll get into the jobs in the labor markets, what that's going to look like. I got off 2 calls this morning, and people are really expecting that, hopefully things will slow down so we can get caught up. But if we're still going to have continued growth, it's not a contraction or a significant contraction that's just going to give us a lot of free time that we can have time to fix things up, because we're still going to be moving forward, and there's still going to be growth, which means we still are going to be just falling further behind slower. So,
I'm not sure if that's an optimistic or a pessimistic way to look at that.
Well, I try to put myself out there as a pragmatist and a realist. So maybe it's just there, but relying on the facts. Let's talk a little bit about jobs. We've seen a lot. We've got all these titles and names. So we've been struggling with labor shortages for years, which is super complicated when you get down to it, why we have shortages, and it goes anywhere. Well, there's enough warm body, and there's enough people on the planet, or enough people within our boundaries to do all the jobs, but a lot of them aren't prepared. They don't have the skills. they don't have the child care, they don't have the health care. There's a million reasons why people can't get back to work or do the jobs that are available. So talk a little bit about that. But then we also have the demand for jobs. So there's a lot going on, obviously, with employment. And I think it's remarkable. I knew you guys had a good forecast record, and I looked at your trends, and it looked like through 2018, 2019, you were hitting 99% accurate at your employment trends. Last year, you slouched.
I know.
Fell down to like 96% or 95%. I don't remember what the exact number was, but yeah, that's just remarkable. I mean, because
Thank you.
On a macro level, I have a tough time keeping up with it, but to get down to a precision like that. So let's talk about, is hiring going to continue at this rate? Are the job shortage, labor shortages going to continue at this rate? What do you see happening?
Couple factors in there. Yes, job shortages, or not job shortages, but employee shortages will continue. That problem is not going away. That was actually a problem before COVID. I mean, that was not new. It just intensified. And I want to circle back around to that. The rate of shortages is likely to go down because the overall economy is going to be going into that slower period of growth. So you won't see businesses trying to expand quite as quickly if they still need to be expanding to accommodate even 2% growth. Sometimes you kind of question how much you really need to expand for that. So you will see that intensity goes down some in 2022 and 2023, but we will still have the shortages. And to your point, we have more demand than we have people for it, and it's coming down to the skills issue. It's coming down to the other aspect that you didn't mention was location. So location was a big issue too. We have our offices here in New Hampshire, and we were looking to hire more and more economists, but there weren't. At one point, I was convinced we had scooped up every economist in the state, frankly. But we have since been able to grow beyond that. And I think that leads into actually part of why we've seen such mass resignations and turnover in some places too, is because so many people went virtual and you were able to work remotely, you weren't limited by your location as much anymore. So it opened up that doorway to finding the talent you're looking for with the skills that you need, and them not having to be in your physical office all the time. So that led to some of that, which is part of why we've seen some mass hiring too, is going, oh, I can hire this person while I need to hire this person because my business is growing. And then as you take someone else's employee, they have to go through that whole hiring process again. It's a big ripple effect. But the job openings numbers are still up at record levels in some industries. Manufacturing has record number of job openings. Wholesale trade is up near there. Lots of construction is up near record levels. I mean, it's just been massive amounts of job openings as we're trying to keep up with all the demand. Some of that manufacturing piece is because we are trying to manufacture more here in the US as we're trying to get around some of our supply chain issues. So it's a big jumbled up mess that's trying to be unrolled. It's one of those unintended consequences, just keeps going and going sort of things.
And again, with the same kind of focus, are there certain industries? I mean, are we going to continue? What are you seeing like in some of the industries that were hardest hit? Hospitality, entertainment, travel. What's the forecast there? And then as well as like healthcare, because it seems that although healthcare has I've been involved with healthcare for 40 years, but 20 years ago we were facing nursing shortages, but now not only is there not enough of trained people, but a lot of the people are just burnt out, and so those resignations look like they continue. So in a couple of those industries, what are you expecting to see? More of the same or different?
More of the same with the medical, definitely. Even pre-COVID, before this was an issue, that was one of those markets we were always expecting to be a place where we needed more bodies. If you look back to Brian and Ellen Bolio wrote the book Prosperity in the Age of Decline, I want to say it was about 6 years ago now, roughly sometime last decade. We wrote this book about the coming Great Depression. We expect sometime around the 2030 time period. And one of the things that they were recommending is, if you have children, recommend they go into nursing because we're going to need more and more people in that field. And that was 6 years before COVID was even a thing. So now you're adding in all the burnouts and the high demand there. That yeah, it's going to be a long-term problem. And we have an aging demographic trend that's going to be putting more and more strain on that. So I expect that's going to be a long-term, at least through the next decade issue.
Jackie, there's some things I think that also not only are affecting Wall Street, but they're affecting Main Street too. And two of those I'm hearing just from a lot of my friends, they're bringing up inflation and they're bringing up interest rates. Are there any data or predictions you have around inflation and interest rates for 2022 and how that might be different than this year?
Sure. Short answer, expected to go up. Longer answer, we can get into all sorts of specifics of we here at ITR will actually break it down into your specific pieces. If you're looking at your own industry, steel prices, or all sorts of different components, we can break it down into lots of different ways of what your input costs are, basically. Overall, though, expect it to go up. Part of that is the unintended consequence of all the stimulus money. So as we were all having more disposable income and rushing out to buy stuff, it creates that demand, which creates that increase in prices, as well as, even if you take it back even further, some of the tariffs and trade issues that we had even pre-COVID created some of this problem. So it's not going to go away. It will ease in the rate of rise, but it won't go away in terms of prices will still go up.
Yeah, we're up to, I have 4 sons and one of them are a set of twins that are 1.5. And so
Aww.
We're going through about 10 gallons of milk a week. And I've noticed on our grocery bill, just the milk alone, we've almost doubled the amount we're spending on milk. So what you're telling me is I'm going to have to take out an additional account here, find some extra revenue for milk this next year is what it sounds like.
Okay, I got to ask a logistics question. I mean, how many times do you go to the grocery store for that? Because I can't picture fitting 10 gallons of milk in my fridge on top of everything else.
Oh, yeah. My wife gets quite a few looks. Between the orange juice and the milk, she basically fills up 1 cart just with those 2 items.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
And they have a refrigerator tractor trailer out back, right?
That's right.
So there's so many things, so many different areas that we can go off. And you said earlier you were kind of take a deep dive. I don't know if you went in. I know Alan and his brother, wrote the book 6 years ago. I've been talking about this perfect labor storm since 1999, right before the dot-com boom, when basically the terms, if anyone can fog a mirror or warm body hiring, you got hired. And we sort of reached that state for some jobs, although we have much more knowledge jobs and service jobs and skill-based jobs than we did that back then. But even then, we had this booming economy. So that's come around. But some of the trends, and I don't know if you were going to get into this, is when people talk about labor shortages and they go, oh, it's because of those darn millennials and Gen Z. They just have a horrible work ethic, or it's because of baby boomers retiring, or as you mentioned, maldistribution. People are just not located in the right place. And that problem could somewhat be taken care of by doing more virtual or hybrid work, that you can reach where the people are for many of those jobs. But ultimately, some of these trends have been coming along for decades. One thing that I would look for, and I'd look for your input on, is just the participation rate. I don't know if you can comment on that. If not, but basically, I mean, there's just less percentage of our population that's working. Yes.
So couple of things I want to hit on there, if you don't mind. One of them was, you mentioned the whole hiring if they fogged up the mirror sort of thing. I was actually talking to a couple people in the service industry just yesterday, 2 separate companies who they went through that period earlier in returning from the pandemic. Since then, they've gone back to this isn't worth it. We really need the right skills. So I am seeing that here, since
that's our business.
So I appreciate that. In terms of participation rate, yes, we still have some skewing in there because not everyone's come back post-pandemic initial shutdowns. We had a lot of, and I certainly don't mean this to sound sexist or anything, but it's just a data fact. So there were plenty of women who left the workforce to be the primary caregivers when their kids had to be home from school. And so they haven't all come back yet, even though some of the schools are opening back up. We did see a lot of people retiring early because of the pandemic. And so that reduced some of the labor force available. To your point about the millennials, some of the data is showing that they were slower to enter the workforce than other generations ahead of them. Not that they haven't, depending on which part of the millennial bandwidth they are at this point, but they waited a later age than past generations. So that's something we're actually still diving into here at ITR Economics, trying to figure out more of the why behind that. And is that just a blip, or is that something to be worried about with the next generations below them? That's an ongoing research project we have that we're planning on actually releasing more information about come 2022. The other aspect of it is also looking at those same utilization trends is the manufacturing industry. Those people working in those fields are generally getting older each year. The median age is getting older that year, and that there's not a lot of younger generations entering that segment. So that's going to be an ongoing issue. And to alleviate some of that burden, one of the things we've been recommending to a lot of our clients is increase your automation, increase your AI. I know it's easier said than done, but it really does come into a long-term plan. And that's partially because we talked about inflation earlier, and wage inflation is a big piece of that too. So being able to automate with a machine is going to reduce your cost long-term, as well as not having to worry about finding those bodies that don't seem to necessarily want to be in a factory the same way they used to.
I'm glad you bring up the AI and the automation piece there, Jackie, because being in the technology space, a lot of times we hear folks that are weary of it, or they're scared of technology, and they immediately think technology is going to take our jobs, when actually the reality is no, technology is not going to take your jobs. The person who can work with the technology and understands it would potentially be the person who could take your job. And so it's more an issue of upskilling or reskilling to understand how to work, in symbiosis with a lot of those new automation pieces,
yes,
as opposed to taking away their jobs. And that's what I was going to ask. Is that how you see it too? It sounds like you agree.
Oh, 100%. The econ side of me says that's creative destruction 101. We bring on new things. It creates new roles, new options. It does eliminate the inefficient things and just create those new opportunities.
So what? And speaking of the technology, and I know people have complained about Zoom fatigue. Can't wait to get back to the office. All this technology, kids, people on their phones all day long, and obviously there are some ill effects of that. But the premise that I've raised, and again, you have maybe some data to this. If not, you have an opinion about it. Hopefully, if we rolled the clock back, if this was 2010, you were only 6 years into working with ITR Economics. You were evaluating the economy, and we had the pandemic. We wouldn't have had Zoom at that place, because Zoom, one is we wouldn't have the bandwidth. There were startups, and I interviewed a few people back then on another podcast that had startups with that was really very similar to Zoom. They could have been Zoom had it been a different time, but we didn't have the bandwidth. I mean, we're still operating on 3G dial-up. We didn't have the bandwidth to be able to do that. Technology saved us in two major ways. That what would the economy have been like if people still had to go back to work because they couldn't work remote or virtual? They either would have been laid off, or we would have had a lot more hospitalizations and deaths than we had. And the other thing is, we wouldn't have had a vaccine. Whether you're pro or con, it wouldn't have existed, because that was done through technology. And it wasn't a 10-year plan to get it done. It was a few months. Am I on the right track with that? And again, is that going to be our savior the next time around with technology? Because there will be, whether it's another pandemic or terrorist attack or whatever, we're going to have more disruptions.
I think you're on the right track. I was trying to think through what life in 2010 was like, frankly. I was trying to picture my office back then.
We're in the midst of a recession.
Yeah, this is how much of an econ nerd I am. Instead of picturing my life at that point, I pictured where on the chart we were.
It was pretty ugly.
It was. Anyways, I think you're right. I think that it would have been a very difficult time. Technology was a huge savior. We would have found a way, and this might sound too rah-rah-ish, but one of the things I love about our country is that we find a way to make things work. We're creative people. It's one of the benefits of being in business in the United States. We have a lot of creativity that just keeps going and finds a way to make it happen. So what I was going through my head was going, okay, we didn't have Zoom, but we did have conference calling. So the pictures make a big difference, but we would have still been able to at least limp by for a lot of things. I think we at least were had the ability to work remote if we needed to. I hated it even back then, but we were doing it some days back then. So we would have found a way to at least get us by, but I think it probably would have pushed us all back into the office a lot sooner. I think about the kids who are going to school. They're in school because it's the better way to learn, but they're all wearing masks. So I think more of us would be just in the office wearing masks nonstop. But I do think we probably would have found a way. But I also agree that technology is going to be one of those big things that keeps us moving forward and keeps us helping us through any other obstacles that come our way. It keeps getting better and better. And I'm a big fan of technology, despite what my children think every time I pick up the remote for the TV.
We are going to take a really quick break. We've been talking with and listening to Jackie Greene from ITR Economics, who, again, I will reiterate this, has a remarkable almost 95% accuracy rate in what the future is going to be. So you need to pay attention to 2022, 2023. When we come back, we are going to continue that conversation. We're going to find out what are some of the promising trends that we have coming up. Right now, we're going to hear from one of our sponsors, Success Performance Solutions, and stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Change doesn't pick favorites. No matter who you are or where you live, the year 2020 was filled with one unexpected challenge after another. According to the authors of The Adaptation Advantage, we are incredibly well prepared for the past, but woefully unprepared for the future. That leaves millions of people feeling scared, worried, frustrated, and confused. Whether you're the owner of a business or a worker out of a job, adaptability is now an essential skill you need to ride the next wave of normal. The good news is that science shows that adaptability is learnable. Adaptability gives us the confidence and courage to think about change and embrace opportunity in the right way. Adaptability gives us hope for a better future. And goodness knows we need hope. Are you ready to embrace change and double down on your future? Contact Success Performance Solutions today to schedule a consultation about how you can reimagine your team's future, how you can begin to think about opportunity the right way.
Welcome back, everyone, to Geeks Geezers and Googlization. Thank you for being part of Googlization Nation. We're talking with Jackie Greene today from ITR Economics. I highly recommend you go up to their site, ITReconomics.com, and check it out. They've got a lot of good reports, but right now we are hearing from, we're going to be talking about what are some of the promising trends. You just heard the commercial about adaptability, hope, and opportunity. Let's talk about what are some of the things that you see really promising there, Jackie, that we should keep an eye on, or what should we keep an eye on to see as a business owner or as an employee about jobs?
Well, I hate that you put the word promising in there. I feel like it backed me into a corner a little bit there.
we can back that out.
But trends you should be watching are, I always revert first and foremost to leading indicators, right? There's a whole collection of indicators that give you that first glance at what's coming up for the economy and generally for your business 9 to 12 months in advance. So we have a whole collection, and I don't mean this to sound as a shameless plug. I'm just trying to help you find a starting point. It's the ITR Trends Report, and even our own ITR leading indicators, one that I use a lot, and it's been very predictive for the overall macroeconomy and many businesses I work with. So that's where, if you're looking to figure out your business, find your leading indicators first and foremost. Some promising trends, though. I know everyone thinks the infrastructure bill, first and foremost, that's going to be going and hitting home for everyone. But I want to rein in some of the enthusiasm, and I don't mean to be a wet blanket. I'm just trying to be realistic about what I see from the data. So
I'm glad you're doing it, because that was one of my questions.
I'm a forecaster. What can I say? I saw that one coming. With the infrastructure bill, everyone's expecting this big leap forward, this big surge, but it takes time, right? I mean, it takes time. Even shovel-ready projects take months to actually be put into place and actually happen. And even then, the infrastructure bill that's been passed really is focusing on segments of construction in the economy, not a wide blanket. So it's primarily focused on transportation and utilities. So those sectors will see some benefit, but it takes that time. And remember that that money is spread out over an 8-year time period. So it's not that it all hits in 1 year. So it's some mild upward risk to our overall forecasts in 23-ish, but overall it's more something we're going to see hitting in bigger picture in the later years. But there will be some mild impact in the near term.
And one of my concerns with that is that there's shortages, especially in construction, in the trades, in the manufacturing, the supply chain, and the products, and all that. So it's good news that we're going to be fixing the infrastructure, but it still hits the, going to supply chain, labor markets. Where are we going to find people to be able to do all those jobs? And if you're taking them from one place, if it's not a net zero game, or it is a net zero game. I mean, we're taking them from one industry or we're attracting them from one region, then the other suffers a bit.
And that feeds into some of that inflation outlook too. And you think about the materials used to put those projects into place, not just the human capital, but actual physical materials. Those aren't now available for another place. So we're going to see that pricing going up, and that's that bigger inflation picture.
Yeah, I just saw in the class last night, little things that just pop into your head. I just saw where helium, the shortage of helium, and it was even exacerbating the shortage of semiconductors. And I'm looking at the 6 helium balloons that they brought in for one of the students' birthdays. So, feeding that shortage that we go there. There's a question that that Jason and us strategically looking at next year, and we're going to make a big theme of this because it seems to be popular and we missed it. But we asked a lot of people of, what questions should we be asking? And I'll throw that out to you as if you're a business owner, what questions should they be asking that they're not right now?
But they're not.
Yeah. What are people missing?
Yeah. Well, because what immediately jumped to my mind was what question should they be asking? The first question I would be asking is, I know there's that pull on the labor, that there's the turnover risk. So is my culture one that's going to keep people here? Someone else can always come in and offer money, but is my culture, are my other benefits what's going to be enough to keep the people I want here? So that's what immediately came to mind, but I don't know if that's what people aren't asking. That's just...
Well, they've got to put importance, and now we heard it from an expert, an economic expert. They hear it from HR people all the time and organizational people, but they heard it from an economist.
I think I just lost my wings.
that it's important. So that's a good thing. Because
if you start getting emails and inquiries from SHRM and some of these agencies wanting you to keynote Jackie, just remember, it all started right here.
All right, will do.
Is there anything that let's rephrase that. Is there anything that you wish employers would ask that they're not right now?
I wish that they were thinking about how they can really move through the next couple of years. This isn't just a short-term thing. This is really thinking the long-term. How am I going to make this doable in the long term? To me, and I keep going back to the human capital, and I swear it's not playing to any particular reasoning. This is really one of the things on my mind a lot is you make investments in your machinery, you make investments in your people the same sort of way, making sure that their skills are trained up. But that's why you also have to have that culture in place so that they don't walk out the door once you've trained them up on the skills you need. Part of that labor shortage is really tying in with a good source. Just like you would have a vendor for a component, you got to find good training grounds and good places you can partner with to get that skilled labor in there and invest in your own training process so that you get the skills you need while getting in the labor that you need also. You're hiring for attitude at that point and not necessarily a skill set. So if you're willing to take that on, I think you'll be in a better position. I think I was supposed to phrase that as a question there, Alex, but
yeah, no worries. You did a great job and putting you on the spot there. I know you have another commitment, and we're kind of getting toward the end of the show. Any final comments or thoughts? Actually, I have one before that, and then you can
Okay.
put that in there. We talked about slower growth, growth a little bit slower, but still growth through 2023. Are you going beyond that?
We are, in general, yes, we are. Overall, you're going to see growth going through for the overall macroeconomy into 2025. And to get more specific, it's going to pick up again after 2023, but overall growth into that period before the next noticeable recession comes. And that's a recession, not depression. I'm very careful with that wording because if you've been following ITR Economics, you also know we are talking about another depression scenario towards the end of this decade into the next decade. So there's a distinct difference when I say recession this decade.
So we're going to get a little bit of a breather in 2023 to 2024, but then it's going to rebound again. You're going back up a little bit. So
get some more growth, enjoy it.
Yeah. So yeah, if you think you're still in the heat of it, it's just the lull. It's the center of the hurricane, right? So the eye of the hurricane. So,
Wow,
and that's for Jason living in the Hurricane Alley. So
oh,
That's right.
So and Tornado Alley. Jackie, really appreciate it. I know this is an incredibly busy time of the year for you. We're probably all the time. Wish you a happy holiday, happy New Year. It's great to meet. Thanks for sharing your advice and your wisdom. I highly recommend people go up to ITR Economics, learn more. If they need to reach out to you, Jackie, what's the best way?
My email is jackie@itreconomics.com, or actually, frankly, reaching out to anyone in the company. And I say that in the sense that our fantastic consultants all around, whether they're the economic consultants or the business consultants, helping you find the answers you need and the resource you need. Everyone here is happy to help. So really, anyone at ITR Economics is going to be great. Just going onto our website, there's a live chat that they will be your best, fastest resource most of the time too.
Yeah. And you got your on-demand series and many other things up there. So I urge people to go up and take a look and follow them and connect with you and reach out to Jackie or anybody on their team. Jackie, I do hope you successfully filled big shoes. Would love to have you back at some point. Hopefully you'll come back often. In the past, last year, just for craziness, it didn't happen. But we usually like to get a mid-year report and end of the year, and you've become a mainstay here. So hopefully that'll continue. But again, wish you well. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your advice, and thanks for what you do.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to talking with you guys again soon.
It was fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Happy holidays.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Bye.
Time flies by, Jason, but so everything we've been talking about for people, when does it get back to normal? We're going to be living in that never normal for a while. You may think you're going to catch your breath, but then it's going to, as I said, it's the eye of the storm. You're just in the middle of that.
You use the term, and I think it's a theme we've had with several of the guests these last few months. You've used the term addicted to certainty. And boy, oh boy, does it seem like we have been hit right between the eyes and realizing we have been addicted to certainty for quite some time. And just like you said, here we are almost 2 years into the pandemic here in just a few months. And most of us probably thought, oh, once the vaccines are here, we'll be back to the certainty that we used to cling to. And it's becoming abundantly clear, no, that's not the case, that there's still going to be VUCA. And this is why the adaptability that you coach and teach and we talk about every week is so important. It's a life skill, truly a life skill, the adaptability that we all have got to have, not only to succeed in being able to work and be productive, but also to be the best we can at home as well.
Yeah, we keep going through these examples and people keep throwing it out. And I look at, I can't think of a single thing that any human being is not going to face, but having to change their behavior a little bit. And that's adaptability. And the analogy to addicted to certainty, and you're, being a psychologist, and this is your background, you're probably familiar with it. But I went up and I looked at what are the stages that people go through with change, and it took me to the 5 stages or 6, depending on whose model it was, of what people go through with change. And they talked about the pre-contemplative stage, that people don't even recognize it, or I'm just not going to do it, I don't believe it's true, I don't think we have to do it. And there's a lot of people there, but then it's that we're at that time of the year too, New Year's resolutions, that I'm definitely going to do something, but I'm going to do it in 2 weeks. We're January 1st, I'm going to stop eating, I'm going to start exercising, I'm going to treat people better, I'm going to recognize people. But then you have to go to the action step. And it's like 90% of people never take action, or they take it for a day and then it's too hard and they don't know. And the only way you can get through that is really changing your behavior. And that's really what we're talking about with adaptability. It's not just being more flexible, but it's having the skills to, we certainly need grit and resilience, but having the other skills that we need in order to actively make that change and make it part of our lives. And we will be, people who are addicted to certainty will be in recovery for the rest of their lives. So we'll continue that analogy, and we got some exciting things happen next year after the first of the year, and we will be kind of dripping out over the next few weeks. But before we end of the year, and this is usually the last show of the year, we have got 2 powerhouse guests coming up. We have Evan Sohn from recruiter.com. And again, we're going to go take a deep dive into what's going on with that human capital that Jackie was talking about. What are the changes? What are some of the trends he's seeing? How effective those are change, or is it change, or is it just more lip service? And then we're going to end the year, and this is during the break. So if people aren't working, you'll have all the time in the world because you'll be on vacation. Many people will be on vacation.
Listen on the bottom.
The last Wednesday, the 29th of the year, we are going to have Dave Ulrich, who is probably Mr. HR, can't wait to have that conversation about where we're going. So the next 2 weeks, we're going to continue on what's ahead. Everybody needs to stay tuned. We really have some outstanding people to be able to get inside their head a little bit, get their advice, and go from there. Jason, any final words for today?
No, just excited. Love the tee up there. These next couple of weeks, we're going out with a bang, and it's going to be exciting too to start dripping and sharing out some of the exciting things we've got in store for next year too. So glad to be on this journey with you, my friend.
And we're so pleased that your listeners to or observers or to Geeks Geezers and Googlization. Thanks for being part of Googlization Nation. If you're not part of it yet, please go up to googlizationnation.com. You'll be on our newsletter list, be apprised of new events, new happenings, and 2022 will be exciting. So we're hoping to add a lot more to that community as well. Until next week, don't let the shift hit your plans.